He thought owning land meant security, a place his family could always call home. But when a black man in Pine Bluff County woke up to find his 1,500 acres signed away without his consent, he realized the fight for justice was far from over. The papers claimed abandonment, the signatures looked official, and yet every inch of that soil carried his family's blood, sweat, and history. This wasn't just theft, it was erasure. How do you fight back when the system itself seems rigged? Against you? But what he uncovered buried in old files would flip the entire story on its head. Calvin Rourke's mornings always started the same way. A steaming cup of coffee in his hand, boots pressed against the worn boards of his porch, and his eyes scanning across the 1,500 acres that had been his family's lifeline for nearly a century. Every pasture told a story, his grandfather's. First fence posts, his father's barns rebuilt after storms, his own sweat poured into keeping the land alive. To Calvin, this wasn't just property. It was identity, legacy, and survival. Life in Pine Bluff County was steady, if not simple. The subdivision on the edge of his ranch felt like another world. Neat driveways, HOA rules, and polished lawns that never carried the weight of history. Calvin stayed on his land, working sunup to sundown, never expecting that those tidy neighbors would one day lay claim to what was his, because behind those manicured hedges, plans were already in motion. Papers were being filed, signatures forged. And by the time Calvin found out, his world would tilt on its axis. He thought the land tied him to safety. He had no idea it was about to pull him into the fight of his life. It started small. Just a look. A sharp glare from across the street, the kind that cuts through the night and makes you feel like you've done something wrong when you haven't. He tried to ignore it, kept walking, bag slung over his shoulder, footsteps steady. But then came the sound, the squeal of tires against the curb. A car pulling up too fast, too close. His heart skipped. The window rolled down. Voices spilled out. Taunts at first, the kind meant to sting. Words thrown like stones. Each one sharper than the last. He kept his eyes forward, tried to pretend it was nothing. But pretending doesn't make hatred disappear. The car crept forward, keeping pace with him, its headlights flooding the sidewalk like a spotlight. He wasn't walking home anymore, he was being hunted. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" The voice was mocking, but heavy with something darker. He glanced back just once and saw faces, smirking, watching, daring him to respond. His throat tightened. He knew the rules. Don't talk back, don't show fear, don't give them a reason. But in moments like this, reasons don't matter. The laughter grew louder. The car door slammed. One of them stepped out, boots hitting the pavement, slow and deliberate. Every step echoed like a warning. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like concrete. His mind screamed, "If I run, they'll chase me. If I stay, they'll corner me." There was no safe option, just choices that felt like traps. Then came the shove. Hard. Sudden. His bag hit the ground, spilling across the sidewalk. Papers scattered, his phone skidding out of reach. He bent to grab it. Another shove sent him down. The pavement tore at his hands, but the sting in his chest was worse. He wasn't just being pushed, he was being told, "You don't belong here. His." Voice cracked when he finally spoke. "I live here. This is my street." But the words only made them laugh harder. "Not tonight it isn't," one of them sneered. The others closed in, circling him like predators. Their shadows stretched under the streetlights, swallowing him whole, and in that moment he realized something chilling. They weren't just trying to scare him. They wanted to break him, to remind him that no matter how hard he worked, no matter how quietly he lived, no matter how much he belonged, in their eyes, he would always be less. A siren wailed faintly in the distance. For a split second, hope flickered. But it wasn't help. Not yet. It was just a reminder that time was running out, that this night was about to tip into something far worse. His fists clenched. His chest heaved. Every second stretched thin with terror and rage. Would he fight back? Would he run? Or would this be the night his story ended? Not with a shout, but with silence. Because what happened next would leave scars no one could see and questions no one wanted to answer. And in the very next moment, the line between survival and tragedy was about to be crossed. The shouting grew louder. Orders barked from men who didn't see him as a neighbor or a landowner or even a human being, but as a threat that needed to be contained. Hands grabbed at his arms, rough and unrelenting. He tried to speak, to explain, but his words were swallowed by the chaos. "This is my property!" he cried out, voice cracking, but it only made them tighten their grip. One officer shoved him against the gate so hard the metal rattled. Another reached for the cuffs. And in that moment, surrounded by flashing lights and eyes that refused to see the truth, a sickening thought hit him. They might actually erase me here. Erase my story, my family's legacy, as if it never existed. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat like a warning bell. He thought of his grandfather walking this same land, of his father planting trees that still stood tall today. Generations of sweat and sacrifice, all of it now hanging by a thread. The papers, the lies, the accusations, none of it mattered in this moment. What mattered was survival. The crowd that had gathered on the road was silent, recording, whispering, phones raised, eyes wide. Every lens captured his humiliation, his struggle, the raw violence of being treated as an intruder on his own soil. He could feel the judgment, the pity, and the fear radiating from them. Was this how history would remember him? Not as a fighter, but as another black man dragged away for daring to exist in a space someone else decided he didn't belong? His knees buckled as they tried to force him down. For a split second, he thought of giving in, of letting them take everything just to make it stop. But then he heard his mother's words echo in his head. "Don't let them bury you while you're still breathing." That spark lit something inside him. With every ounce of strength left, he planted his feet and shouted, not just for himself, but for every generation before him and everyone to come. "This is my land, and you will not take it from me." The words hung in the air like a lightning strike, and for the first time, hesitation flickered across their faces. The tension was unbearable, the silence deafening, and in that fragile pause, caught between destruction and deliverance, the story took a turn no one expected. The night ended, but the scars remained. He went home alive, but something in him had changed forever. The sound of boots on gravel, the weight of cold suspicion in the officer's eyes, the way his dignity had been stripped in front of strangers, those things don't fade with time. They live on in the body, in the memory, in the silence between breaths. He replayed it again and again, not what he had done, but what could have happened. How close he came to becoming another name, another statistic, another hashtag. And yet, as heavy as that night was, it revealed something deeper. This wasn't just his story. It was part of a much larger pattern, one that has haunted Black and brown communities for generations. The humiliation he felt is the same humiliation fathers, mothers, and children have endured at traffic stops, in classrooms, in neighborhoods that never felt like home. What he carried home wasn't just his own pain. It was the weight of a history still unresolved. But he also realized something else. Silence protects no one. If he stayed quiet, the system would remain unchallenged. If he pretended it didn't matter, the next man, the next woman, the next child could suffer the same fate. So he spoke out. He told his story, and in telling it, he transformed his pain into power, because that's how change begins, not in courtrooms or headlines alone, but in the courage of those who refuse to be erased. The impact? He no longer walked with the same ease, but he walked with a new fire. He began showing up to community, meetings, sharing his experience, demanding accountability, and every time he spoke, someone else stood taller. That night became more than a wound. It became a rallying cry. But here's the truth. It shouldn't take another near death, another moment of humiliation, another headline, for people to pay attention. His story is not an isolated event. It is a mirror reflecting the deep fractures in a society that still struggles to see every human life as equal, every voice as worthy, every soul as sacred. So I'll leave you with this. How many more stories like his must be told before we stop treating them like isolated tragedies and start treating them like urgent calls for justice? And when the next moment comes, because it will we turn away? Or will we stand together and finally say, enough?